Now, for this morning, we'll be focusing on a topic that is known as excretion. Once we're completed excretion, then we're gonna move into what is known as homeostasis. So, now the reason why we need to look at excretion first is simple because before we're able to look at homeostasis, it is of great importance that you know what is excretion in terms of its definition, the different excretor products, and of course the importance of excretion. Of course, in looking at excretion, we have different excretory organs of the human body. Now, the fact that we are an excretion persons need to also know that plants also excrete, meaning that excretion also take place in plants. But we will be focusing on the human body. So on the slide, what we are seeing there, the first pointer is saying that it is the elimination of metabolic waste products. So the word elimination mean get rid of. So if I should ask you to define or tell me what is excretion, then basically pointer number one can be used as your definition. Second pointer, feces include excretory products because they include metabolic waste. Now, what we mean by metabolic waste, these are wastes that normally produce as a result of metabolic or chemical reactions taking place inside the human body. So that is what is known as metabolic waste. Moving down, excretions are toxic. Now the word toxic mean poisonous. So if we should allow these excretory, or if the human body should allow these excretory products to stay too long inside the human body, that is when they will become poisonous or toxic. So they are saying that these excretory products or these toxic products, they must be removed from the human body because high concentration can damage the body tissues. Now, what they mean by high concentration, that simply means that it is whenever we have them in the human body in large amount in terms of quantity. Now, the importance of excretion. So, why is this process important to the survival or the proper functioning of the human body? It helps in the maintenance of salt balance in the blood. So that is the amount of salt that is circulating around the human body within the blood. Now what this means is that if you should consume too much salt, what the human body will do is that the human body try to get rid of some of the salt. That is why whenever you sweat in, let's say for example you're sweating let's say for example your head is sweating and the sweat should run down in the eyes, you will realize that the eyes actually start to burn you. That is simply because the sweat contains salt. And whenever you cry, and let's say for example you're sweating and the sweat should run down in the mouth and you taste the sweat or the tears, you will realize that those fluid they actually taste salty. That is simply because one way in which the human body get rid of excess or extra salt that you would have consumed is via sweating or whenever you sweat. So that is one way in which excess or extra salt removed from the human body. So the second pointer helps in the removal of metabolic waste that may be poisonous to the organism. So the term poisonous, they are using the term poisonous now. In the previous slide, they would have used toxic. So toxic simply mean poisonous. So you can interchange those two words. Removal of unwanted substances. So now we'll be looking at some of the substances that are termed to be excretory products. So if I should ask you to list or give me some examples of excretory products, then definitely carbon dioxide should be one of your listed excretory products. So carbon dioxide, all carbon dioxide normally remove out of the human body. So the first point I was saying it normally remove during exhalation. So exhalation is whenever you're breathing out. So it is the respiratory system that is responsible for getting rid of carbon dioxide out of the human body. So when you breathe out, that is what is known as exhalation. So if you are being asked to define or tell what the term exhalation mean, that is basically whenever you breathe out. In gaseous exchange, carbon dioxide diffuses from the capillaries into the alveoli of the lungs. Now, while looking at the respiratory system, that is when you will be looking at what is known as gaseous exchange in more detail. So, gaseous exchange, it is normally a process that normally takes place inside your respiratory system where the human body exchange carbon dioxide for oxygen. What that means is that the human body get rid of carbon dioxide and take in oxygen inside the blood capillaries. Because whenever you breathe in or inhale, you normally take in oxygen, and whenever you breathe out or exhale, you normally give off carbon dioxide in that exhaled air. The third pointer, the carbon dioxide rich air then expelled into the atmosphere. So the air that you're breathing out, they are saying that it contains a lot of carbon dioxide. So that is why that third pointer there is saying that the carbon dioxide rich air. What that means is that it contains a lot of carbon dioxide. That is why they attach the term rich to it. So the atmosphere is basically the air around you or the environment, the outside world. That is what is known as the atmosphere there. So again, the subheading removal of unwanted substances. So in a sense, we're looking at the excretor products that your body need to get rid of. And again, the importance of getting rid of those excretor products is because if they are being allowed to stay too long inside the body, then they can become poisonous or toxic, and that of course will be dangerous to the human body. So after looking at the importance, then now we are looking at some of the excretory products in terms of examples. Water. Now, of course, water can be an excretory product, and that is basically when we consume water in excess amount. So in terms of we getting rid of water, we have more than one ways. Whenever we urinate, that is one way in terms of getting rid of water. Whenever we sweat, especially when the time is hot or if we're doing something strenuous on the human body, there's an increase in temperature. So the sweating process, of course, help to cool the human body. So the first pointer, in excess water can be very harmful to the organism. So what they're saying that if there is too much water in the human body, it can actually put strain on the human heart. So that is why we sweat, that is why we actually urinate. Because the human body is cognizant of the fact that if too much water stay inside the human body for any long period of time or more than how it's supposed to stay inside the body, then it will actually put strain on the human heart. So as a result of that, the human body find means and ways of getting rid of that extra water. So that is why we normally sweat, and that is why we urinate. A small amount is removed from the body during exhalation as water vapor. Now, if you should try the experiment where you actually stand in front of a mirror and blow on that mirror, you will realize that after a while the mirror start to get foggy. That is simply because it is watery. So when you breathe out what is called water vapor. So that water vapor, it is moist. So that simply means that it contains some amount of water in it. Moving down, as we sweat, we lose water. So right away, I can ask you a question. I can ask you to give me two ways by which the human body get rid of water, and that is during exhalation, that is via the water vapor. Whenever you sweat, that's the second one. And the third one on the slide there, urine contains a large amount of water. So we have three ways by which the human body get rid of water according to that slide that you have in front of you. Whenever you sweat, whenever you urinate, and whenever you exhale in the format of the water vapor there. So is that clear to you, students? Okay, perfect. All right, moving on. So a next excretory product now. So again, in terms of the excretory products that would have looked at carbon dioxide, water, and now we are looking at salts. So salts normally release from the human body during sweating and of course urination. So in terms of these excretory products, yes, you should be able to list the excretory products, and of course you should be able to tell me how those excretory products release or how they get out of the human body, and it is actually there in terms of the notes. So as for salt, they are saying that the human body get rid of salt via sweating and also via urination. The next excretory product is known as nitrogenous waste, otherwise known as urea. So nitrogenous waste, they are saying it normally release during urination, and that is via the kidneys. So whenever you urinate, that fluid that comes out as urine, it contains a excretory product that is known as urea. Moving down to that second pointer below nitrogenous waste, um, a small amount is released in your sweat. So basically, what they're saying is that whenever you sweat, it also contain urea, and that is why if somebody should sweat a whole lot, and let's say for example a construction worker or somebody who cut cane, mechanic, just about anybody who actually sweat a lot based on their daily activities. Now, if they should wear the clothes for an entire week or for a long period of time before they actually wash it, then the clothes it going to smell what we call rink. That is simply because the sweat contain that waste substance that is known as urea, and urea is what actually makes urine of that smell that we normally call rink. So far we have been looking at we looked at four different types of excretory products. Carbon dioxide, the human body get rid of it whenever we exhale or whenever we breathe out. Excess water, the human body get rid of it whenever we sweat, whenever we urinate, and whenever we exhale or breathe out. Salt, that is another excretory product where the human body get rid of it whenever you sweat and when you urinate. And the next one or the fourth one is nitrogenous waste, and that nitrogenous waste is known as urea. So whenever you're writing the note, or you can make note of it, that nitrogenous waste, they are talking about urea, urea. That's how it is actually spelled. So in terms of how the human body get rid of nitrogenous waste, we get rid of it whenever we urinate and also when we sweat. Now, after looking at those excretory products, the next concept is looking at the different organs, the different body parts that are involved in getting rid of these excretory products. Now, the skin is one such organ, so we're gonna spend some time looking. Still breaking up. You hear me clear now? Okay. Now I'm saying that after looking at the excretory products, then we're now gonna spend some time to look at the different organs that are responsible for help getting rid of those products out of the human body. So the skin is one such organ. So in terms of looking at the skin, first we're going to look at the structural arrangement of the skin or the different parts that make up the skin. Now the first pointer there is saying that the skin, it is the largest organ of the human body. So in terms of organ, they are saying that the skin is the largest organ. And you will realize that the skin basically cover the entire human body in terms of the external aspect of it. The only organ comes in a variety of colors. So if you realize persons who say that who call a white person, their skin have a different color, completely different from we as persons who say that we are black persons. Persons who are black, some of us are literally black, while some of us have a lighter color that we call brown. So what they are saying that in terms of the entire human being, um, this is basically one of the organ where they are different in colors based on our race. In terms of our internal organ, like for example the kidneys, the heart, the lungs, it is just one standard color. So, so a black person have the same color heart like a white person. So that's what that pointer there is trying to cover. Just telling you that yes, the skin normally comes in a variety of color, depend on which race you come from in terms of type of individual or people. The third pointer covers our entire body and protects it from the outer environment. So right away, that is the third pointer. It is giving you one function of the skin. So if I should ask you to give me a function of the skin, then you should tell me that it actually protect the human body from the outer environment, or if you want to use the term atmosphere, no problem. Now, in terms of components or parts that make up the skin, when you look at the diagram, you will realize that the image, it is showing you different parts, different section, different components of the skin. But in before we move into the detailed components, for example, the blood capillaries, the artery, the veins, and the fat cell, the sweat pores, before we look into those detailed component, basically what they are saying that this. Repeat, repeat. I'm not hearing you. Okay, the function. No, no, I'm saying that on this slide it actually shows one function, which is of a protection. Now the skin also have other functions where it also regulate body temperature. That's another function of the skin. It also secrete or produce sweat. That's the next function of the skin. Now, I didn't mention those functions simply because I mean we are not at that in terms of notes, so that's why I don't mention them. But since as you bring it up, then of course I mention them because the skin have more than one function. It is just that, and what you're seeing now in terms of notes, there is only one function of the skin that is actually there, and that is to protect the inner body parts from the external environment or from the atmosphere. All right, so the last pointer there has two major layers, so two major parts, the epidermis and the dermis. So those are the two major layers of the human skin. It is just that within the dermis, within the epidermis, we have some other components. So if I should ask you to give me the two major or the two layers of the skin, then your answer should be the epidermis and the dermis. Now looking at the diagram, so the dermis, so when you look at the diagram there, so the this entire section here is known as the epidermis. All of this section going up to the top part of the skin. This represents what is known as that layer that is called the epidermis, while the dermis is normally the deeper section. So all of this section down here is known as the dermis. So in terms of questions now, I can ask you to give me different parts of the skin that are found in the dermis or different parts of the skin that are found in the epidermis. And that is what we're now going to move into. So we're going to look at the two different layers that make up the skin. So again, we look at the skin as a okay, different parts of the skin found in the epidermis and dermis. So different parts of the skin that found in the epidermis. So if I should ask you to list them, then you would list them. So different parts of the skin that are found in the epidermis are the dermis.
Yes, sir. What would that be answer?
All right, in terms of different parts that are found in the epidermis, that would include, for example, the ear, and that would include the carnified layer. So when you look on the diagram, you will see them, you know. So on the diagram, you have the ear there, you have the sweat pore, you have the carnified layer, and we have the Malpighian layer. So those parts are found in the epidermis.
So you said something like that about piggy man there. What you say?
Malpighian layer. It's on the screen now. Look on the screen and see it, man. Look, but you have to look on the diagram.
Yes, sir. Nearly. Alright.
All right, so now we're going to look at these layers individually. So starting out with the epidermis, so they are saying that the epidermis, it is thinner than the dermis. So that's a difference between the dermis and the epidermis, where basically they are
So you
saying,
have to say that. Right.
yeah, oh, okay, you're not true in terms of those questions. What you doing? You're writing the notes or the questions you're writing?
What's the question and the answer?
Okay, okay.
Repeat the question and say difference between.
Difference between dermis and epidermis. Right, so I'm saying that the epidermis, it is thin, while the dermis, it is thick. That is in terms of size. So as for the epidermis, the second pointer is saying that the epidermis has several layers, and the reason why they are saying that the epidermis has several layers is simply because when you look at the diagram, you will see that they said that this section is known as the carnified layer, and they have a next section that is known as the Malpighian layer. So that is why they are saying that the epidermis has several layers. Moving down to the third pointer, the top layer, it is called the carnified layer, and that is what is at the extreme top of the human skin. So what you're literally touching in terms of your skin, that is what is known as the carnified layer. Now the carnified layer, we normally say that that layer it is dead, meaning that whenever sometime whenever you bathe and whenever you rub the rag, sometimes persons will see some things and we say that it is actually dirt. Now it is not literally dirt some of the time. It is what is known as the carnified layer. Now we have two parts of the human body where the carnified layer where it is normally more obvious, where you can literally see it. That is in your hand middle or under your foot bottom. Sometimes we have older persons normally peel off something what they normally call it corn. Now that is what is known as the carnified layer. So that's why the older persons normally call it corn because the word corn come from that term that is known as the carnified layer. So the two layers of the epidermis, one is the carnified layer and the other one is known as the Malpighian layer. And the Malpighian layer is normally the lower one. So as for the Malpighian layer now layer of cells which produce the pigment melanin. Now melanin it is a very important pigment. This is what normally makes our skin dark. So persons who are darker in terms of skin complexion, those persons' skin normally contain more melanin. So if you have two persons standing side by side, one of them is brown in terms of complexion and the other one is black. If I should ask you which individual skin have more melanin, then you should tell me that it is the it is the person whose skin complexion is darker, or if you want to say the black person. So what that basically is saying is that if you compare the amount of melanin in a white person versus a black person, then will the black person's skin contain more melanin. So in terms of that pigment, the Malpighian layer, it is what is responsible for producing that pigment that is called the melanin. And melanin, the more melanin inside of a human being skin, it is the darker they will be in terms of their skin tone or their complexion. Melanin, the second pointer I should say, melanin gives the skin and hair its color. So in terms of darkness. Now, a next important function for the melanin, and that is the third pointer. So melanin protects us from the ultraviolet rays in sunlight. Now, persons who have a darker skin tone, now those persons they can work for longer hours in the sun and the sun don't affect them in comparison to persons who have a lighter complexion. That is why you will realize that persons of color normally do jobs, or white persons normally give persons of color the job of cutting cane, for example. So that's why you have the farm worker, the farm worker program, where persons from Jamaica, persons from Mexico, persons from Cuba, those persons normally go up on the farm working program, and those are the one who do most of the work in the field. So you realize that the farm workers from Jamaica, when they go up, they pick vegetable, they work on the cane farm, they work on the apple farm, simply because black persons, their skin have more melanin. And the more melanin in your skin, the better your body is protected from that light rays that come from the sunlight that is known as the ultraviolet rays. So in terms of the functions for melanin, repeat. I'm not hearing you clearly, Jones. Let me turn up the volume on the computer, see if I can hear you clear. Yes, Jones, you can repeat the question or what you were saying. All right. Very good question. Now, persons who bleach, now the bleach literally damage the Malpighian layer. What that means is that they are those who tone and those who bleach and this in the same bracket. What you're doing is that you're actually damaging your Malpighian layer. Hence, you're reducing the amount of melanin that your skin produce, and that is dangerous, and that can lead to skin cancer. And that is simple because if you're exposed to the sun for extended period of time and don't have enough melanin in your body, then that can cause skin cancer. So what they are doing, they are damaging the melanin. Because if you realize, persons who tone are persons who bleach, what they basically do is that they lighten the tone of their skin or their skin tone. And again, the darker your skin is in terms of complexion, the better able your skin will be able to protect you from that ultraviolet ray light that comes from the sunlight. So, in a nutshell, basically, the persons who bleach, they actually damaging the melanin, and the melanin, it offer two functions. One is that it actually protect you from the sunlight, and of course it give your skin that color in terms of darkness. So that is why when the bleach basically get rid of the melanin, so they are affected more in terms of the sun. That is why you realize that they have to be wearing long sleeve um, sweater, simply because they realize
Can you repeat the full function of
two
melanin?
function of melanin, give the skin its dark color and protect us from the ultraviolet rays from the sunlight. So the two functions for melanin: give skin its dark color, that's one, and the second function is that it protects us from the ultraviolet rays in sunlight. All right, so looking at the carnified layer now, so they are saying that it is the top layer. It is made of dead cells. You would have already mentioned that it is the top layer, made of dead cells. So that is why I would have mentioned that whenever you're bathing, for example, sometimes you will see something looking like dirt, but it is not literally dirt. It is basically dead skin cells that are known as the carnified layer. The third pointer protects the softer living cells below. So as you see for pointer two is saying that it is dead. So it basically offers some amount of protection for the softer cells, which would be at the lower or the more internal aspect of the skin. Now the dermis now. So looking at the diagram, you'll realize that the dermis, it is much more inner. So it is the innermost part of the human skin. Right. So in terms of components are some of the parts that we can find within the dermis. We have the blood vessels, and the blood vessels of course include blood capillaries. It include vein, it include artery. So those are the three different types of blood vessels that are located within the dermis. So the blood vessels now, they are responsible, according to the slide here, they are responsible for transporting substances, and the blood vessels also help to regulate body temperature. So those are two main reasons for having the blood vessels underneath the surface of the skin. According to the pointer again, as you can see, they are responsible for one, transport the substances, and those substances include, for example, nutrients. So the skin, of course, need nutrients just like any other body parts. And the other function is that it regulate, or if you want to say, control body temperature. And in a moment, we're going to look into how the skin actually regulate or control your body temperature. All right, moving on. So, other components or other parts that are found in the dermis, nerves, and the nerves carry messages to and from the brain. So, looking on the diagram, I'm quite sure that you should be able to locate the nerve. As for this diagram, it is not labeled, but this is known as the nerve right there. I don't know if persons are seeing it disappear. Right, so so the nerve basically locate just below the epidermis, and in terms of the function for the different components, person should be able to give me the function for the different components as going over the functions. As for blood vessels, blood vessels transport substances, and blood vessels regulate body temperature. As for the nerves allow the skin to communicate with your brain. So the nerves basically carry information to and from your brain. The other component is known as the muscle fiber. And as for the function of the muscle fiber, they are saying that the muscle fiber attach what is known as erectile muscle, and it actually attach the ear follicle so that the ears can stand up or lay down. Now the ear and the human skin, you will realize that sometimes it actually, those ears, they stand upright, and in another environment they will actually lay down. Can anybody tell me during what time the ear will stand up and during
Whenever
what
you're
time?
cold.
Right, whenever you're cold. Down the reason why the ear actually stand up whenever you're cold is simply because the sweat pores, they normally close. When the time is cold, the sweat pores normally close. So in them closing, the muscles, the erectile muscles will actually contract. So once those erectile muscles contract, then they will actually cause the ear follicle to actually stand upright. Now, in terms of those sweat pores closing, when the time is cold, what the human body want to do is the human body want to trap heat inside the human body, meaning that the human body don't want to get rid of any heat. It don't want the heat to go out in the environment because the time is cold. So the human body is trying to conserve and the amount of heat that actually inside of your body. So in that process, the pores normally close because when them close, then it will actually be much more difficult for the ear to, not the ear, for the heat to come out of the human body. So that is the reason for the ear to be standing upright while or during cold time or if you're in a cold environment. When the ear is laid down now, that time is whenever the pores are open, and the pores are open more so whenever the time is warm or when the time is hot, because once the pores are open, then heat and sweat can now leave the human body, and that is what the body want to take place during hot environment. and dermis. So it also contain another structure that is known as the I'm sorry for that. That is known as the sweat glands, and also what is known as the sebaceous glands. So let's look at the diagram and see if we can locate those. So yes, of course we can locate them. So in terms of the sebaceous glands, that is it right there. In terms of the sweat glands, it will be down the bottom section there where you see the label that said the sweat pores. In terms of their functions now, very important. Now the skin normally secrete a oily substance, and this oily substance normally go onto the surface of the skin, which help to keep the ear flexible, meaning that the ear it need to be flexible. So the fact that the ear can stand upright and it can lay down, in order for the ear to be able to do that, it need to be flexible. So they are saying that this gland basically produces the oil that allow it to be flexible. Because if there wasn't a production of this oil, then the ear will not be flexible, and that simply means that the ear will not be able to flex, or and it will not be able to lay down or stand upright, for example. As for the sweat glands, a very important function. The sweat glands produce or secrete what is known as sweat. So students, once you see that term or that word secrete, secrete mean produce, secrete mean release. That's what the word secrete mean. So they are saying that the sweat glands basically produce or secrete sweat. The second point below the sweat glands there, they are saying that sweats evaporates to keep the body cool. So if you're just sweating and the sweat is not being able to evaporate, then you're not gonna get any cooler in terms of temperature. So in terms of sweat helping or aiding that cooling process of the human body, the sweat should be able to evaporate. And the only way the sweat can evaporate is by cool air or fresh air being able to go or move over the surface of the skin. So if you're in an environment, if you're in an airtight room and you're sweating and no fresh air is being allowed to come in that room, then the sweat not going to evaporate. And once the sweat is not evaporating, then that sweat cannot help you. Because the only way the sweat can keep your body or reduce your body temperature is by it being able to evaporate. And evaporation of sweat will only take place if and when cool or fresh air is being allowed to move over or interacting with the surface of the human skin. Now, in terms of different component or different things that your sweat contain, you should be able to list them. And the last pointer on the slide is telling you that the sweat contain water, it contains salts, and of course, it contain urea. So they are giving you the components or the different things or substances that can be found in your sweat. And again, you will realize that if you're sweating, if the face is sweating and the sweat should run down and inside the mouth and you taste it, I'm quite sure that you're going to taste some amount of salt. And that is simply because one way in which the human body get rid of salt is via sweating, or whenever you sweat, you actually get rid of salt that way. All right, moving on to another concept, regulation of body temperature. Now, regulation of body temperature means control of body temperature. So now we're gonna look at how the skin help to control your body temperature. And in looking at how the skin control your body temperature, we're gonna look at how the skin control that temperature in two different environments. One, when the time is cold, and two, when the time is hot. So we're gonna look at how the skin behave while you're in an hot environment versus whenever you're in a cold environment. So the subheading reads, that is the blue right in there, eat less to cool the body. So again, as you can see, it said eat less to cool the body. Now the question I'm asking, in what environment do you believe the body would want to lose heat? When the environment is hot or when the environment is cold? So looking at the heading, eat less to cool the body. Which environment? Hot environment or cool environment?
Cool environment.
Look at the heading again now. Eat less to cool the body. That means that the human body is now losing heat to keep the body cool. So that environment, is it hot or is it cold?
Hot.
Yes, hot.
Hot, sir.
Yes. So it is whenever you're in an environment that is hot, that is when the human body would want to lose heat. So let's so examples of those are the on a really hot or sunny day. So the sun is really hot and you're outside, you're playing or you're doing something on the outside. Another example would be you in a kitchen.
Sir, repeat the question.
Um, the question, the
Yes,
question,
sir.
the question would be, what in what environment the human body would want to lose heat. So in what environment the human body would want to lose heat to keep it cool. In what environment the human body would want to lose heat. So in what environment the human body would want to lose heat to keep it cool. And the answer for that would be hot environment. I can continue now.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so when the time is hot in terms of environment, we have different reasons that can cause your environment to be hotter than normal. Again, when the sun is extremely hot on a really sunny day, that is one example in terms of environment. Let's say, for example, you're working at a restaurant and you're working in the kitchen. That is also another environment where there is a lot of heat around you. So those are just two examples of environment where your body now will need to produce sweat or find other means or other ways of keeping itself cool. So number one is saying that when you're in an environment where there's a lot of heat, there is something that is taking place in the human body that is known as vasodilation. So again, when the time is hot, sun is hotting, the sun hot extremely in terms of temperature, or you're in a restaurant and you're working in the kitchen, those are environment which the human body are basically is encountering a lot of heat. So what normally take place is that something that is known as vasodilation is now taking place underneath the surface of the skin, where the arteries are where the blood vessels. One, the blood vessels they actually come near to the surface of the skin. Now, looking at the diagram here, right? So, looking at the diagram, we are seeing some circles. So, look where you see vasodilation. Let me see if I can find a much more zoom up diagram so you can study it. Let me see if I can find a zoom up diagram. Vasodilation. No, I'm not seeing another diagram. Alright, so just look if you can. Are you seeing the diagram? The one that said,
Yes,
yeah, right, vasodilation.
yes, sir.
So if you look at the circles, so the circles represent the blood vessel. And if you look at the arrows basically pointing up. So what and then you see the surface of the skin. So the surface of the skin mean the top part or the outer part of the skin. So what they're saying is that whenever the human body is extremely hot, your blood vessels normally do two things. So I'm gonna repeat. When the human body is extremely hot, that is whenever you're in a hot environment, your blood vessels that are underneath the surface of your skin, they normally do two things. One is that they get larger in terms of size, or they get wider in terms of their size. That is what is known as dilation. The word dilation means get larger. So again, I'm going to repeat the concept. Whenever you're in an environment where it is extremely hot and the human body temperature increase significantly. So when the human body get hot, the blood vessels that are underneath the surface of your skin, they normally do two things. One is that they get larger in terms of size. That means then dilate, because dilate mean wider. Dilate mean enlarge. And the second thing that normally happen to those blood vessels is that then come closer or they move closer to the surface of the skin. You get that?
No, sir.
All right. I'm gonna use an
Where
exa-
it can too fast.
I'm gonna use an example. Let's say for example you're inside the house now. That means that the environment it is cool and nice. If you should not go out in the sun and the sun is extremely hot, and you stay out in that sun for extended period of time, then that simply means that your body temperature gonna increase. Then the fact that your body temperature is increasing in an effort to keep the body cool, those blood vessels underneath the surface of the skin. Once the time is hotter than normal, those blood vessels gonna do two things. One is that the blood vessels underneath your skin surface, one, they're gonna get larger in terms of size. That means that them dilate. And the second thing is that the blood vessels they're gonna move closer to the surface of the skin. And that is what you're seeing there on the diagram. So again, if you should change from that cool and nice environment that you're in now, if you should move from that cool environment and go to one where it is hot, where the temperature is much more higher, to keep in an effort to keep your body cool, the blood vessels that are underneath your skin surface, they're gonna do two things. One, they're going to dilate. Dilate means that they will get larger, means that they will get wider. That's one thing where your blood vessel are gonna do. The second thing where your blood vessel are gonna do is that the blood vessels they're now gonna move to the closer to the surface of your skin. I'm gonna ask you a question. Have you ever seen or have you ever realized that whenever you're doing something strenuous, whenever the human body hot, when you look at your hands, you realize say, I see someone sitting on a call vein? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Right. So so the vein that you're seeing whenever whenever you're hotter than normal is what I would have just explained. Vasodilation means the blood vessel then come closer to the surface of the skin. Because that's why you can see the vein now, Simply because those blood vessels, one, then get larger, and two, then come close to the surface of the skin. So now you can literally see them. Our next scenario, our next example. If you should go to the beach, for example, persons who we call white person, you ever realize that their skin literally get red, in a white again it turn red? Have you ever realized that?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Now the reason why you see for them skin literally get red is because you're now seeing their blood. Cause you see because for them skin white, you can see red through white. You understand? If you have one red piece of clothes or a piece of red cloth, and you put that piece of red cloth behind a white piece of paper, don't you think you will be able to actually see shade of the red beyond that white paper? Yes or no?
sir.
Right, so it is the same thing with white persons. When the white persons are when a white individual go in the sun, or they are in an environment which is hot, because vasodilation is taking place underneath the surface of the skin, which that means that one, the blood vessels underneath the surface of the skin, one, they are getting larger, and two, they actually come closer to the surface of the skin. So the reason why you can see that their skin getting red is because the blood basically come closer to the surface of the skin. And the fact that their skin tone is white mean that you will now literally see the shaded of the red blood color. I mean, looking at them externally. So looking back at the slide now, where we said eat less to cool the body. So whenever you're in an hot environment, the human body want to lose heat. That's why the heading say eat less. So I can ask you to tell me how the human body react in an hot environment. And one way is that vasodilation will take place. And the nurse is saying that vasodilation, so they are saying that the arterioles, they are talking about the blood vessels near surface of skin enlarge in diameter. Right, so the blood vessels near the surface of the skin, they enlarge in diameter. The second point is saying that this enlarged blood vessels, so the fact that the blood vessel get larger, so the larger volume of blood carried in the blood vessels will carry more heat, which lasts through the skin. So it is your blood that normally transport heat around the human body. So the fact that the blood vessels get larger simply mean that our common sense should tell you that once the blood vessels get larger in terms of size, then those enlarged blood vessels will transport, or they will be able to carry more blood, I mean, to the skin surface. And the fact that more blood is there simply mean that more heat will be there, because it is your blood that actually transport the heat around the human body. You understand that?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Right. So the more blood that is within those blood vessels underneath the surface of the skin mean that it will contain more heat. And the more heat that is underneath the skin surface there, the faster that heat will be able to come out of the human body. So in terms of the human body getting rid of heat, the human body actually try to find that way to ensure that the blood underneath the surface of the skin, it actually go as near as possible to the environment. And that is to come up right exactly underneath the skin. So that is why whenever you're doing something strenuous, you normally see your vein. Because the vein then try to come as close as possible to the atmosphere. And that close as possible would be underneath the surface of the skin. So what they're saying is that the human body cannot allow the blood vessel to come out of the skin. You understand?
Yes, sir.
Right. But the
Yes,
human
sir.
yes, but the human body will try to allow the blood vessels to come as close as possible to the environment, and that close as possible will be just underneath the surface of the skin there. Right, so if I should ask you to tell me what happened during vasodilation. Now we have more than one things that normally happen during vasodilation. So write down the question. What during vasodilation, state what normally happened. So during vasodilation, state what normally happened. So write down the question. During vasodilation, state what normally happens. Ready for them? We're gonna list them.
Yes, sir.
Blood vessels dilate, that is one. So the blood vessels dilate, and again, dilate mean larger, I mean wider. So one, blood vessels dilate. Two, blood vessel come nearer to the surface of the skin. So blood vessel get nearer to the surface of the skin, that is two. Ready for the third one?
Yes, sir.
Blood vessels carry more blood. Blood vessels carry more blood. Alright, so we would have just looked at one way in which the human body lose heat or try to keep itself cool when the time is hot, and that is by vasodilation taking place. So the second way, repeat, Davidson.
What was the second one?
What was the second one in terms of how the human body keep itself cool when the time is hot?
Yes, sir.
This right. The second one is on the screen now, which is sweating. So we're gonna look at sweating now. So sweating. So the first one that we looked at was vasodilation. So when the time is hot and the human body want to keep itself cool, vasodilation would be one of them, and the other one would be sweating. So that is what we're going to be looking at now. So sweating also keep your body cool when the time is hot. So we're now going to look at it in detail now. So the first point is saying that sweating is a response made by the human body to excessive heat in the surroundings. And that is perfectly correct, because if you're doing something that is strenuous, if you're doing it especially outside where the sun is hot, or you're doing it in, for example, the restaurant, you're doing something where the restaurant will know that there will always be a lot of heat in the kitchen. And the fact that you're in such environment where you're surrounded by a lot of heat means that you go basically your body not gonna want to find a way to get rid of the heat or find a way to keep itself cool. So sweating, they are saying, would be one such response. The third pointer, evaporation of sweat cools the body. So previously I would have mentioned that if you're sweating and if evaporation is not taking place, then basically sweating not gonna be of any help to you. Meaning that the only way sweat can keep the body cool is by that sweat being able to evaporate. And the only way the sweat can evaporate is by fresh air actually being allowed to interact with the surface of the skin. So that means air a blow right around the skin. Air is blowing across the skin. So while that is taking place, then we have what is known as evaporation that is taking place. So it is actually the evaporation of sweat that gives you the cooling effect. So write NB in a book. NB, note briefly. You write the NB.
Yes, sir.
Sweating by itself. Sweating by itself. So the NB, sweating by itself does not cool the body. So sweating by itself does not cool the body. You have that?
Yes, sir.
Comma. It is the evaporation of sweat. It is the evaporation of sweat which has the cooling effect. It is the evaporation of sweat which have the cooling effect. Right, so if you just a sweat like that, you get everything? You write it by the way?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Right, so if you just sweating like that and evaporation is not taking place, meaning say fresh air now blow across the surface of the skin or interacting with the surface of the skin, then you're not gonna get any cooler. You're just gonna feel tormented and uncomfortable. That is why you normally feel uncomfortable when you're in a crowded vehicle and the wind that then wind up on the AC now work properly. You just feel torment. That is simply because you're sweating, but the sweat is not being able to evaporate. So you're not getting any cooler. You're actually in an environment where you're extremely uncomfortable. So sweating by itself not gonna give you that cooling effect. It is the evaporation of sweat that actually gives you the effect. Now, so in terms of the notes, the PowerPoint, I send it in Google Classroom and in WhatsApp. So in terms of where you stop today, as for writing, as for the discussion, it would be at sweating. So you will write that slide, you will write this slide, and the third slide here. So in terms of where you must stop for writing, stop at this slide because we would have gone through discussion that would take care of the notes up to this slide. So as for vasoconstriction, you don't need to write that now. If you want to write it, no problem, but we have not discussed vasoconstriction. We actually stop at this slide in terms of evaporation of sweat. So we have 2 minutes left, just summarizing what we would have gone through for the 2 minutes. So we would have looked at excretion and the definition, the human body getting rid of metabolic waste. So the pointer there said that it is the elimination of metabolic waste. And metabolic waste are basically chemicals that are produced, are substances that are produced during chemical reaction inside the human body. So these substances, our body need to get rid of them because if they are not removed from the human body, then they can become toxic or what is known as poisonous. So that is we looking at what is excretion. The importance of excretion now. If we don't get rid of these metabolic waste, then they can cause damage to us as human being or an organism. So that is the importance of getting rid of excretory products so that they are not poisonous or so that they don't poison us in terms of cause chemical damage. Then, of course, we looked at the different products or the different excretory products. So, in terms of we listing them, so we have carbon dioxide there, we have water, we have salts, and we have nitrogenous waste. So, those are the four excretory products that we looked at. Then, the next concept would be now for us to look at the different excretory organs, and the only excretory organ that we spend time looking at today would have been the skin. So we spend extensive time looking at the skin by looking at the layers, the two layers, and then within the two layers, then we have different parts, and of course we look at those parts, and after looking at the parts, then we looked at how the skin basically help us as human being. And one way in which the skin help us as human being is by help us to control or regulate our body temperature. And in regulating our body temperature, either the skin gonna regulate the body temperature when the time is hot or when the time is cold. So as for today's class, we only looked at how the skin regulate our body temperature when the time is hot. And that is where the pointer come in play, where it said that heat loss to cool the body. And one way in which the human skin helps us when the time is hot is by allowing vasodilation to take place, and the other way is by sweating. So that's basically what we would have looked at today in terms of class. Now, during the course of this week, I'm gonna actually post some form of tests on the Google Classroom platform. So those persons who are able to access Google platform entirely, I will be posting a test there. For those persons who are not
Say
able,
it link to join Google Classroom.
repeat.
Say it send a link to join in a Google Classroom.
I can resend it. Yeah, man. The link I did send it in the WhatsApp group, but I will the fact that I mention it, I will resend it. Right. I'm gonna add once class is ended, then I'm gonna resend that link. Right. So I'm gonna post a test there in terms of some graded questions. So for those persons who are not able to go on it, for example, Serena Thompson, because she's on YouTube, she's not on Google Classroom, so I need to call her and find out why she can't access Google Classroom. I will make other arrangement for those persons. Right, so that should do it for class today. So enjoy the rest of the day and you can move on to your next class. And remember to indicate in WhatsApp that you're present. Okay, students?
Yes, sir.
Okay, take care.